My first guest tonight has been called a feminist provocateur, and she calls herself a working-class intellectual. She burst onto the public arena with the publication of Sexual Personae in 1990. Her latest book is an equally opinionated collection of essays called Vamps and Tramps. Tonight, Camille Paglia joins me from the CBS television station WCAU in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Camille, thanks for coming on, and welcome to our program.
Oh, thanks a lot, Tom. It's great to be here. I've been watching you since 1973.
Well, the last time our paths crossed was backstage at the Conan O'Brien program, which is the 85th mention of that program tonight here on CBS, and it's a pleasure we could finally get together. In reading about you this afternoon, I learned that you are a professor of humanities in Philadelphia. Could you define for all of us watching, what are humanities these days?
Well, it's really the liberal arts. It's literature, the painting, film, television. I teach a wide variety of things.
But in the teaching of this wide variety, does your point of view on human relationships, human sexuality, and the place of men and women in society come across to these young, fertile minds in your classes?
Oh, I think a lot of my theories are drawn from my students. I have very close contact with freshmen, and so I'm very aware of the disaster of the young romantic lives of my students in this age following the appearance of AIDS on the world landscape.
I was going to ask you, for the differences in the disaster of young romance between this time and our time, or I'll say my time, not our time. One obvious difference is the AIDS situation. What else is different in the 1990s in young romance?
Well, we girls of the 1950s were trained to be virgins. We could hold out and not lose the interest or the respect of young men. And I'm afraid that we who created the sexual revolution bequeathed a kind of anarchy to the young. So I think there's tremendous pressure on the young. They don't know whether to be sexually free or abstinent, and there's a kind of melancholy, I fear, over their lives.
People who have read your books, people who have seen you lecture or appear on television, know that you are anything but politically correct. You have been quoted as saying that you are pro-abortion, you are pro-drugs, you are pro-pornography, you don't mind snuff films. How do you keep going in this age of, if I made a misstatement with the last one, please correct me.
Yeah. No, I'm not pro-snuff films. I simply am saying that there were a lot of feminist establishment prudes who were hysterical about snuff films, which are non-existent. Every attempt to find an actual snuff film has failed.
I'm sure you've been asked this before. In a time when people talk about personal choices being made personally, how can you go public and say, look, I'm for abortion. I don't think pornography is harmful. I don't think that drugs should be kept illegal. I think they ought to be legalized. When you put that position out, I would think that a lot of people would say, turn her off.
Well, I'm a radical 60s libertarian. I believe that the government has no right to intrude into the private realm. I find this consensual sexual behavior and drug taking part of that private realm. At the same time, I think that anyone in a position of responsibility, a train driver, a truck driver, should submit to voluntary testing.
Now, people who have read of you know that you were brought up Catholic in America, Italian Catholic in America. It might be said that your very liberal views, your outspokenness, is somehow a backlash against your Catholic upbringing. You're nodding your head. Yes, you recognize that question, or yes, it is kind of a backlash.
Oh, no, there's no doubt that I was raised in the very repressive and conformist 1950s when American Catholicism had the Legion of Decency. You remember there was like a code.
Sure.
I remember so many films were condemned and so on. There's no doubt that my work is a reaction to the Catholicism of my youth.
And when that was being handed down, I remember going on Sundays to church and the priest would read the list of motion pictures which the flock was not allowed to see. What did your parents say to you about that, if you had questions about that? Were your mom and dad true believers in the faith, 100% right down the Vatican party line?
Oh, yes. My parents are very religious, and I have a cousin who's a nun. There are many, many people in my family, my background, who are abbesses or sextons, or there's a bishop and so on. And 100 years ago, I would have been a nun. I'm practically a nun now. I think that I'm part of the 60s rebellion against all those old-fashioned moral codes.
We've read about your bisexuality.
Yes. I'm an open lesbian. I'm coming up on a 2-year anniversary with Allison Maddox. After a 10-year drought in my sex life, I'm very happy now.
How would you describe the difference in male-female sexuality versus, or as opposed to, or as compared with female-to-female sexuality?
Well, I think that men and women are perpetually at war. They will never fully understand each other. I think that a lot of the problems between the sexes, feminism has falsely blamed on men, when in fact there is I think there's a real brain difference. I think women understand each other. I think the level of conversation and intimacy is very intense. But I worry. I don't want a universal homosexuality as an answer to the present alienation between the sexes.
What would be the answer to the present alienation? And as a lesbian now, as you say, an open lesbian, I suppose, as compared to a closed lesbian, although I don't know what that might be. Do you have any respect for men, for what men do, for what they're all about, for the way they think, for whatever they've accomplished or have not accomplished?
Yes, this is why I got in trouble with the feminist establishment 5 years ago with my first book, Sexual Personae, because I talk about the great achievements of male culture, not only the great artworks, but the superb technology from automobiles to the George Washington Bridge. And I said that I was sick and tired of women complaining about men all the time. I come from Italian culture where there are strong women and strong men.
The reason that they see me laughing here, and you would see me if you were in the room with me person to person, I can just, see you and a bunch of your pals, women at the table saying, but by the way, fellas, nice job on the George touch. But anyway, right. I'm sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel that my independence as a modern woman is predicated on male achievement. Appliances, the automatic washer and dryer. I remember that my grandmother scrubbing clothes for 10 children on a washboard in a tub on the back porch.
One of the theories that you don't buy into, which also created a rift between you and the feminist leadership in this country, you don't buy into the position that women in this country have been victimized by men and they lead their lives as perpetual victims. You don't buy into that at all.
Yeah, I despise the victim-oriented nature of establishment feminism. I think that's a terrible heritage to bequeath to young women. I do not see history as nothing but male oppression and female suffering. I believe woman is the dominant sex, in my view.
How so?
Well, I think that woman rules the sexual realm by virtue of her power of procreation, and that most men know how much more powerful women are than they are. I have said that men stagger from control by their mothers to control by their wives.
It is certainly a truism that women control the sexual equation. Mm-hmm. It is not the male person that decides when or not sexuality will take place, but rather when the woman decides that it will take place. So in that sense, there is that kind of control. Mm-hmm. In your observations about men, and I want you to wait till after the commercial because after this break, but I want to ask you here how you have seen men exhibit, well, there are some obvious ways that men exhibit their rage. I think a lot of men are pained about this control. They feel, as you say, they've been controlled by their mothers, by their teachers as young boys and young men. In many cases, these teachers are female. And now, as they grow into sexual maturity, women control when and how that sexuality can express itself. We will continue with Camille Paglia and all of you at 1-800-952-2788, all you vamps and tramps out there in TV land. We'll be right back after these messages. We are back with Camille Paglia, and here is Charlie on the toll-free in Manitoba, Canada. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Camille.
Hi.
Tom, I saw you on with the Nicole Brown sisters a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
I gotta tell you, I was laughing a little bit. Shouldn't they be the last people in the world to go around and tell people what to do if someone in your family is being beaten?
Well, I know what you're saying, but on the other hand, shouldn't they be the first? They claim naivete. They claim they couldn't see this thing coming, and they're trying to point out to others what to look for in a situation where a woman might be being physically abused by her husband. But I see the point you make.
I saw the older sister there on another show, and she was talking about how Nicole called her once and said that OJ just threw her into her door and stuff. And how stupid can you be? I wouldn't send them a dime. I don't trust them. I didn't trust them at all when you had them on. And when one sister was saying about the other sister, oh, she's so smart because I saw her reading pamphlets. I mean, aye.
All right. You've had your 2 cents there, Charlie. Say hi to Camille. She's
hi, Camille.
right
How are
there
you?
in Philadelphia.
Camille, I'm an alum of Bennington College. I know that you used to teach there.
Oh, yeah, they fired me.
Well, yeah, but tell why they fired you.
I got in a fist fight at a college dance.
What? Were you arresting a guy? No, I'm not going to say it.
I graduated there a couple of years, and the school has gone so downhill. There's 2 good teachers left in the whole damn school. I got to tell you, the only reason I went there was because I had heard from a friend of mine who went there that their girls were incredibly easy, and and I gotta tell you, it's true. In fact, what I used to bring up, like my ugliest friends, and they'd find chicks up there. It was
I'll tell you, Charlie, you got your own show going here, and by the way, it's better than the one I got going here.
Hey, let me tell you something. What the show you got going there is a lot better than the one before you.
Boy, I'll tell you, it's really open season tonight, isn't it?
I think you should host the Oscars next year, not Letterman.
Put it out of your mind, Charlie. Anyway, if you had a question for Camille, now'd be the time to ask that.
Yeah, Camille, I actually disagree a bit with what you were saying before. I think that women, if it was up to me, and I'm a guy and I know guys and I know how they think, I wouldn't let guys run anything. You might not want women running things, but guys, I don't think should be running things. And what you said before about women being in charge because of reproductive stuff, it takes 2 to tango. And if it ever became where women said, "Oh, you're not going to have sex with me and have kids," men are stronger and they could just take them over. So I think that argument is faulty.
Well, I say in my work that I think that there are 2 realms: the social realm and the emotional or sexual realm. Certainly, mankind invented the social realm as a kind of flight from woman's power. I think woman dominates the sexual and emotional side of life.
Only because men, allow them to. And if men, that's why I think men shouldn't be allowed to run anything, because I think they're ogres and I think they destroy the planet.
Charlie, stop it. Men are not ogres, and some of them do a very fine job of running stuff.
I agree with, I think Alice Walker said something once about that. If you took 12 grandmothers from around the world, that the next day war would stop, hunger would stop. I got to tell you, I agree with that.
Charlie, did you see the pictures of Mrs. Gorbachev and Mrs. Reagan together during the summit back in 1984 or 85? Please.
Tommy, please don't judge women on those 2 wildebeests.
Well, but then don't judge what into in your life. Charlie, I'm glad you called.
But if you look, I heard someone talking about this last night. If you look at Vietnam, the best and brightest those are all guys who got us in that mess there, Tom.
Charlie, I'm glad you called. Thanks for watching.
I love you.
Okay, love you back. Thank you, my
Camille.
friend. Bye,
I like that you're a lesbian. If I had a sister, I'd make sure she was a lesbian because I don't like men.
Jeez, what's going on? I'm a lesbian trapped in a man's body. Back after these. Jeez. We were talking here seriously before the break about how men exhibit this rage over the control that women have over their sexuality. In fact, Nancy Friday at one time wrote a book about men in which it was called The Triumph of Love Over Rage, in discussing her view of relations between the sexes. How do men evidence this rage? And don't you applaud us for keeping it under control?
No, I think that we cannot possibly understand the phenomena of battering or rape until we understand this question of rage. It's that it's not coming from misogyny, male hatred of woman, but rather male fear of woman. Men must struggle for identity against this totality and omnipotence of woman. I think that current feminist rhetoric has not been fair at all to the difficulties of men's struggle for selfhood.
And how ought women handle this enormous power which they have over their male counterparts?
I think that we need much more understanding. If I could go back again and relive my dating years, like 15, 16, 17, with the kind of knowledge that I have of male sexuality in the male psyche, I think I would have had a much more successful heterosexual life. I think I still would have been bisexual. There's no doubt about that.
But what would you have changed based upon what you now know about male sexuality?
Well, I used to think that men were awful. I used to think that they were. I saw their egotism. I saw their competitiveness. It was only over time that I realized that what men respond to is when women like them, when women project toward them a kind of either maternal or sisterly sort of affection, a kind of nurturing and forgiveness. I certainly was incapable of that for most of my life until I think I discovered it as a teacher.
Do you think women really understand the primal sex drive that is part and parcel of being a man? Do women understand that to men, sex is like eating? I mean, you know, you must eat every day because you're so hungry. And with men, that hunger exists in a sexual way on an almost daily basis. And I don't think women understand that.
I agree with you. I think very few women understand it. I think I am sort of between the sexes. And therefore, the way I look at women as a lesbian is the way that men look at women. And this is why I think I have an understanding as a scholar of sexuality. A lot of my insights are coming from my own duality of perspective.
You know, I remember at my mother's kitchen, there was a book called The New Settlement Cookbook. And it said the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Mm-hmm. They were a little north, you know. Richard in Boston, Mass. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, sir. You're on.
Hi. My question is just, hello, Camille.
Hello.
Isn't your movement, or the movement which you are trying to spearhead in the universities, isn't it really just motivated by envy or resentment against rich women who went to Harvard and Yale? I mean, for example, you're not at Harvard or Yale, and isn't it really just motivated by poor immigrant girls, you know, and their resentment against rich women at Harvard and Yale who happen to be feminists?
Richard, what do you base that question on that Camille has written or has said tonight?
Well, I happened to see her at Harvard,
right?
And I noticed that she tries to be intentionally shocking, and that her manner of being intentionally shocking is really it's addressed to lower class types. You know, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm not being a snob. I'm not being a snob.
Richard, that's fine. Camille, your reaction to that.
Okay, fine.
Well, I think that there's an awful lot of women at Harvard who would be very embarrassed to be called rich because they masquerade as leftists. And leftists are supposed to be espousing the values of the working class. I'm very proud to have come out of a working class background. My father eventually became a college teacher. But I think that, yes, I stand against the elitism of the Ivy League. I have my PhD from Yale, but I despise the kind of conformism and todyism that is epidemic throughout the Ivy League.
Well, that's good because you don't have to work there. Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
One question: Isn't there also a kind of conformism that's going to come along with your movement as well?
Well, I represent a splinter reform movement within feminism.
But I fail to see.
I feel popular. I'm popular. I have enormous popularity, but I'm blocked out of both the literary and the academic establishment.
That's true.
I'm an anti-establishment figure.
But you're happy with that.
I love it.
It's a position you occupy with great reverence.
I adore it.
Good.
I adore being a 60s rebel.
Richard, I'm glad you called. Thank you for your perception. All right, bye-bye. Before we leave here, just one loose end. Why did you get into a fist fight on the dance floor at Bennington?
Oh, God, I've been in fight after fight after fight. Once I spent 3 hours on the totality of my fisticuffs.
Yeah, but why on the dance floor at Bennington? Why, I hear you punched a guy out.
Oh, no, that was a couple of years earlier where I kicked a guy in the rear end, and the feminists the next day presented me with the award of the Golden Boot.
You kicked him in the backside, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Once again, you were a little far north. Nice to be with you, Camille. Thank you for staying up late tonight.
Thank you, Tom.
My pleasure. Camille Paglia. The book is called Vamps Tramps, out now in the bookstores. Back with Jeff Foxworthy after these messages.